Hi, my name is Rob, and I'm a 59-year-old mountain biker from Colorado. This is my journey to the Leadville 100 mountain bike race on August 9th, 2025. I really hope you join along and follow me on my training and my racing to see how this whole thing turns out. In this week's episode, I'm going to talk about VO2 max. And VO2 max is another really important metric to understand how your body works, how it functions, and what its maximum performance really can be. Basically, it's the maximum amount of oxygen that your body can process, or in terms of liters of oxygen per minute per kilogram of body weight. And like FTP, where there's a number and you divide it by your FTP score by your weight in kilograms to get your watts per kilo, FTP takes into account your body weight already. So the number that you get is normalized, and you can compare your VO2 max with everybody else's VO2 maxes that are out there. How it's measured is very similar to the FTP test. The FTP test, 20-minute test, or whatever. I mean, there's different flavors, but I think 20-minute is a pretty common one. But the VO2 max test is a slow progression of intensity of exercise. It's either running or cycling. I'm in cycling mode, so I took the cycling test, but it's a slow progression in the intensity until you can't perform any longer. So you basically go until you can't continue to do it. You wear a mask over your face, which measures your oxygen consumption. It also measures the discharge or the out breath of your CO2. So it's measuring oxygen going in, CO2 coming out. It measures the carbon dioxide in your blood level there, so that you can understand how fast or how well you can process oxygen under a load. So I did my first VO2 max test last May in a lab, this company called the FAST Lab in South Denver, near where I live. I'm not sponsored by them, but they're a great outfit. I looked at a couple of different places to go, but the lab here seemed to be a pretty good one. They had treadmills, also had stationary cycles to do it, and Kathy was my instructor up there. But she ran me through the test. They fitted me to the mask, and she ran it up. Because I really wanted to understand even more about my lactate threshold, I did a lactate threshold test at the same time. So while I was riding the bike and she was turning up the intensity or raising the incline of the bike, and I was getting under stress, she was actually pricking my left earlobe and taking a blood sample every minute during the test and measuring in real time what my lactate concentration was in my blood. Once she did all that, aside from my earlobe being fat and like a grape and bruised like a grape at the end of the test, she put all that data into the computer. It took a few days to get my results back. But my result from the VO2 max test was a 58.2. That puts me in the top 1% of people my age, and really kind of puts me in the top 1% of people all the way down to like 25 or 30 years old. So it's 58 is a really good FTP score, or a VO2 max score, and it demonstrates that I'm in pretty good shape. I'll show you online. I'll switch over to my computer and go through some of the data from that VO2 max test, so you kind of get an appreciation of what that looks like. And I'll also show you some charts that compare age, gender and age groups, and what a good VO2 max would be like. So the other thing about the VO2 max, so you can measure it with the test, that's the VO2 max test, or the ramp test, what they call it, really is probably the best and most scientific data source you can get. I do use Garmin. I have a Garmin Forerunner 965, and I'll probably review this product a little bit later. I'm a big Garmin fan, and I've used a lot of their products, some good, some not as good, so I want to be fair, and I'm not sponsored by Garmin either. But my Garmin actually gives me a VO2 max score every day. So it updates it every day after I'm doing exercises. And what I found interesting is that my VO2 max on my Garmin fluctuates somewhere between, it's interesting, but it fluctuates somewhere between 52 to probably 62 or 64, depending. The more I ride inside, the more I'm on a trainer where my efforts are easy to sustain or easy to be steady state, depending on what zone you're in or depending on how you're trained. My VO2 max will go up considerably. So I've had VO2 max scores based on Garmin in the low 60s. And once I start riding outside where my riding is a little bit more variable, especially on a mountain bike where you're going up, you're going downhill, you're coasting. In some areas you're working real hard, 5, 10, 20 second bursts going up and over hills and things like that. I think your VO2 max gets a little skewed. But in general, my VO2 max hovers around that 57, 58 range, which is really close to what the actual VO2 max test was, which gives me a lot of confidence that my Garmin is giving me some pretty predictable results and at least reliable in the sense that I can see a trend, whether I'm going up or going down in my VO2 max score. So the other thing that was interesting, the lactate test or the lactate threshold test also validated my FTP score. So I didn't do an FTP. The FTP calculation wasn't part of it, but when you plotted, and I'll show you this, when you plot your lactate threshold against your heart rate zones and against your power output on the output results, my FTP, or my FTP at the time, was 255. It's 249 now, but it was 255 then. My FTP score as charted on the lactate test was about 258, which also gave me a lot of confidence to rely on the Peloton as a source for a pretty accurate FTP. I would say it's plus or minus 5%. I do on the Peloton, I calibrate the Peloton before every FTP test, and I'm probably doing FTP tests every 6 to 8 weeks now as I get kind of into training and cycling season, and I think that's super important. I've ridden Pelotons that have been off the charts bad, like in hotels and things like that, and they've been pretty awful in terms of effort, either easy or hard, harder than what I have at home. And I make sure that I calibrate mine every time. And mine doesn't stray very much because I keep it calibrated regularly. And I think that's super important. But yeah, what I'll say, the bottom line to that is I don't have to go get a VO2 max test all the time to measure that, because I think my Garmin gives me a pretty good idea and it gives me a trend. And I do think my FTP is pretty accurate based on my lactate threshold test from the Fast Lab, which is really cool. I'm going to talk more about a book that I found a couple years ago called Outlive by Dr. Peter Attia. He goes into a lot of the data and the science behind VO2 max, specifically VO2 max, not so much FTP, but specifically VO2 max. And I really want to dig deeper into some of the topics that he talks about in his book, which I think are fascinating and super insightful as we age. And as we continue to be fit or athletic, we try to do these things. At least for me, I find it very instructive and very helpful as I try to squeeze the most as I can out of the last of the years that I have. I'll be 60 this year, and I'll probably got a year or two left in me at least. But I want to maximize everything that I do going forward, and I think it's super important. Which is one of the reasons that I get into these races, because it's called a commitment device, and it makes me get out there and train really hard because I don't want to do poorly or even average. I want to do really well on these races. So I've got a number of races coming up, and including Leadville. So that's kind of that is the last race of the season. Probably is going to be the full Leadville, and I want to crush it and do everything I can to train that well. But anyway, I'll talk to you about Outlive in another episode. With that, thanks again for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you're getting something out of these quick videos. And please like and subscribe and send this out to any of your friends who might be interested in the information that I'm putting in. Put any comments below if you want me to talk about anything training-wise. Happy to share my training and share my actual statistics of where I am. So, but remember, keep climbing, keep riding, keep climbing, and don't forget, Colorado's epic trails are waiting for you here in Colorado.